Hello everyone, this is Linkalot here, coming at you with quite a different kind of video. So, I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but yesterday we had a PlayStation showcase where they announced some new games, and the big one that really has me excited is Ghost of Yōtei, which is a sequel to, I think it was 2018's, I don't know the exact year, but it's a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, which I absolutely adore that game, man. Like easy top 10 games of all time for me. I love the combat. It has one of the most beautiful and varied like environments of any game I've ever played. I could sing that game's praises for so long. I haven't spoken about it a huge amount on this channel. Um, I did do a segment on it in this video where I was basically talking about games as an example of an art form, and I would argue that Ghost of Tsushima is one of the best examples of that. Um, but yeah, it's just a game I really, really love. And so I was kind of clamoring for a sequel, and yesterday we got it, and I'm beyond excited. It's called Ghost of Yōtei. So in today's video, I just wanted to kind of break down what we're seeing, things we can expect to see in the game, what the possible story could be, what new gameplay mechanics, that sort of thing. So yeah, let's just get into it. I've also got, before I start looking at the trailer itself, I also want to talk about at the end, I'm going to go over this website, which just has a little bit more information. So yeah, let's begin. So we start with a PlayStation logo. I actually do not currently own a PS5, so I'm gonna need to get one by the time this releases. I've got until 2025. I need to start saving because man, I cannot miss out on this game. I loved Ghost of Tsushima so much, and this is shaping up to be. I mean, we haven't seen very much of it, but it looks like it could be just as amazing. So I need to play this. Let's get into it. So we begin with this landscape shot. And what immediately sticks out to me, and we will see time and time again throughout this trailer going forward, is the landscapes this time around feel so much more vast. I don't know if it's just that there's more empty space, but it's almost like the horizon line is further. Like in Ghost of Tsushima, there wouldn't be an area where you could see this far. There would be a hill, there'd be a mountain. Obviously, the actual map itself might be a similar size, and that's reasonable. That's fair enough. But it's just the environments feel so much more expansive, and I think a big part of that is that they're able to have longer and more detailed render distances using the new power of the PS5. So that's a really, really exciting thing to see. And you can just see Sucker Punch is just continuing to absolutely knock it out of the park with this environment design. I mean, shots like this are just amazing. So let's continue. I mean, what I will say as well is there is a question with some of these shots. You can see here, mix of gameplay and in-game cinematics. So there is a question on if this is, just footage taken from a cinematic, or is it actually taken from, the actual world in game? But honestly, I seem to remember in the first game, obviously you had cinematics, but the the sheer detail and beauty of the world, even in gameplay, it was never far off from a cinematic. So a lot of what we're seeing, especially if we consider that this game is going to be even more technologically advanced with the generational increase in power, a lot of what we're seeing, I think, very well, even if it originally, your first assumption might be this is a cinematic, very well could be gameplay, and that's really, really exciting.
We are beyond the edge of Japan.
So we've got this character speaking here. I don't know who he is, no way of knowing, but what he's saying is super interesting. He's talking about we are beyond the edge of Japan. And this kind of draws into one of the main selling points of this game, and something that could potentially help to set it apart from its predecessor is that I guess Tsushima was a very built up land. It was very cultivated. It was explored, it was known, it was mapped, it was understood. But if we look back at the historical context to when this game is set, which we'll see is later on in the 1600s, the region this is set in is it's modern day Hokkaido. I think it's called Yōtei. That would make sense because the game's called Yōtei. And it was beyond the political reaches of Japan. So I feel like this land is going to be probably a lot less built up, a lot more wild, a lot more untamed, and we really see that through, as I said before, the sheer expansiveness of the environments and some of the wildlife we'll be seeing shortly as well. So yeah, let's continue. There you go.
People
there's the
come
money shot.
to disappear.
So yeah, Mount Yōtei. This is very much going to be the defining landscape set piece of this game, and it looks amazing. I know, I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking that this was Mount Fuji the first time I watched this trailer. They're very similar looking mountains, but no, this is actually on Japan's North Island, Hokkaido, as I said, and I probably butchered that pronunciation, so very sorry about that. But yeah, it seems that this mountain is going to be the focal point, and it looks super, super cool. So, as I mentioned before as well, this game is set in the 1600s, which is quite a lot more recent than Tsushima. I believe Tsushima was around 1200s. So, with this, I speculate one of the reasons they chose to do such a big time jump in this way is that it allows for them to have new kinds of weapons and technologies that didn't exist back then, but historically are now starting to come into existence. So we'll see later on, but there are actually guns, there are flails, there are whips. There's so much new stuff, which this new time frame sort of allows for, which is really, really cool, and I think it's a really clever way of doing it. So what we see here, I feel like this is a shot where your immediate impulse, especially more than any other, is to think this is a cinematic, right? Like something about the way the camera's panning, just the detail of the snow and the blood spatters, it looks so real. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was taken from in-engine, because we see later on that there seems to have been a pretty big overhaul in the snow physics, to something more analogous to Red Dead 2, where you see it over here, and we'll talk about more when we get there, but in Red Dead, the snow would actually leave imprints behind in your wake as you were moving. It was so realistic. It was just an awesome little detail. And I don't think that was a thing in Tsushima. So it seems to be another way in that they're just making this world feel more real, which is awesome.
You are hunting.
So we see this wolf a few times in this trailer, and I'm very, very interested as to what its significance is. I think there's a few different possible explanations, and I'll go over some of them more later, but I think it's probably also very purposeful that the line "you are hunting" is placed over this clip. So I wonder if this wolf has somehow wronged our main character. She's seeking revenge for in some way in which it hurt her. But then, I mean, there's the question of, is this wolf an antagonist then? If it is, I don't. I find it hard to believe it would be the main antagonist, because it would be quite anticlimactic and a little bit lame to go from Khotan Khan, leader of the Mongols, and Jin's uncle to some random wolf. But honestly, who knows? I think they could do something really, really cool with it. And yeah, I'll talk more about it later, but it is interesting, and it seems to be a key bit of imagery for this game that sets it apart from Tsushima.
You are hunting. And now, every Ronin here is after you.
Looking at this, I want to say that there's been an overhaul to the kind of like face animation and face realism, and I think it does look better from what I remember. You know, if I were to compare, I think I'd see a difference. It doesn't look massively better, and I'm not. I don't remember it that clearly, but it's definitely possible, and I think it does look better. So again, you know, that's another thing when you can see a way in which this game will have benefited from its more powerful hardware. So we see that maybe it's not only that our main character here is hunting something, but she's being hunted. It seems like maybe this is some kind of bounty out on her head. So it's very interesting, the question of why. There's a good mystery here.
Still think you're the hunter.
Well, there you go. Do you still think you're the hunter? Maybe it's the other way around. It is a chicken and the egg situation almost. So very interesting. And here we get our first proper look at our new character, who is a female lead this time around. Super cool. Rest in peace, that guy. I see that this game is not toning down at all on the brutality, and I'm all here for it. Oh man, this music. We got this theme starting here. I am in love with this theme. It's so good. I've seen a lot of people comparing it to Red Dead 2, and it has got this kind of Western flair to it, and it goes, oh, it fits so well. It's beautiful. There's kind of, I don't know if I like pan flutes or what, but yeah, this is so good. I love it. I'm so excited for this theme to release on Spotify. I don't know if I like it quite as much as the main theme from Tsushima, which was called Way of the Ghost, but it's pretty good as well. It's really, really good. Okay, this shot here really gets me excited. I believe I might have been unsure with some of the earlier ones, but something about this one especially looks like it's in game to me. And what's so exciting about that is just the size of this mountain. I mean, it fills the entire screen, and this is from a zoomed out perspective. I think about how big it would be from like a zoomed in perspective, from a character's perspective. So this again is tying back into that idea I was talking about earlier, where I feel like the key way they're gonna set apart this game from its predecessor in terms of environments is just making everything bigger, everything more expansive, everything just bigger, you know? I can't think of another word. But yeah, we're seeing that in action here, and it looks awesome. I do wonder if we're going to be able to go up this mountain. You can see all these forests on the side and the snow, and there's so much opportunity for exploration here. So that would be super cool. You know, imagine like it would be like the raddest thing ever if like a final fight of the game is on top of a mountain and you push like the antagonist off. Like it's gonna be, it'll be so good. And it's clearly very important to the story because it's named after a ghost of Yōtei. So we see some stunning, as always, sucker punch, knocking out of the park with their landscape designs. Some landscape shots for this game. I want to first talk about this one because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there were wild horses in the first game. Obviously, you had your horse. That's not a new thing. But if there were wild horses as well, I am at least certain that they didn't exist in huge packs like this. So another way in which they're clearly trying to set this world apart is having it feel more populated, more real, with more wildlife, more animals. And it's pretty cool that it seems that, and I'll go into this more when we look at the description of the story and the world on the website, they have more of a justification for doing this, in that this is a region which is less known about. It's less inhabited. It has less of a human foothold than Tsushima. So there would be, more packs of wild animals that haven't been regimented and hunted to extinction like they have on Tsushima. So, obviously, looking at it reasonably, the reason that there weren't herds of wild animals like this in the first game was because the engine wouldn't allow for it. But it's super cool that they kind of have this in-universe explanation for it as well in this game, which is, it's awesome. It's really, really clever. We can see the imposing flagship Mount Yōtei in the distance here. There's really a sense of, it seems like it takes up such a huge amount of space. I'm not sure, this might be it as well. And, if that is it, it just goes to show how big it must be, because that could be one side of it, this could be the other side, and the areas just look completely different. And it's all just around one mountain. I imagine it's going to be in the center of the map. So really, really nice. Now these two shots especially are interesting because they're both stunning. I cannot deny that. The use of color and the petals going in the wind and the lighting and the temples shrouded in fog. And this one especially, the vibrancy of that red is amazing. But these two shots especially do kind of represent, to me, a little bit more of a going away from some of the more grounded and somewhat realistic environments we had in Tsushima. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some environments that looked kind of like this, well, like insanely vibrant. And you're like, can that really exist? But this is just taking it to another level. I haven't been to Japan. I'd love to, but I find it hard to believe that places like this do exist. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And honestly, I think this might be the best way they can go with this, because I think with a setting like Japan, if you're going to be setting multiple different open world games there, it is going to become difficult to create varied biomes in each. In a setting like that, if you want to have some amount of realism, you can't have deserts, you can't have jungles or rainforests. You can't have more arid environments, salt flats, what have you. So maybe the way to go to make more unique environments and make sure this one doesn't feel too derivative of the last in terms of its world is to just be willing to be a little bit more out there, to really stretch the limits of what could exist. And overall, I think I'm all right with that. My first time watching the trailer, these shots took me aback a little bit because, as I said, they felt quite fake, kind of. Like they kind of remind me. The lighting kind of reminds me of of Journey a little bit, which obviously wasn't a game going for realism in the same way this is. But I've grown to appreciate it and understand that I think this is the direction they have to go. And even if the colors here might not be super realistic looking, other things are. Like the lighting engine still looks amazing. The particles are just on another level. The shadows are incredible. The weathers look amazing, especially some of the shots later on in the trailer. So I think I'm all right with it because these shots are stunning. Yeah, we got a shot here. Probably one of the least interesting shots in the trailer for me. It's just our main character kind of looking into this room here. I guess the main thing of note here is there's the question of if this is a more densely populated room than a lot of the ones we saw in Tsushima, which would kind of be why they're showing this off. They're saying this game is capable of doing more, it's capable of having denser environments with more people, more NPCs. I don't remember. I feel like this might represent an increase in the number of people in a room. I'm not sure. But, nevertheless, it's just showing that, Sucker Punch's sheer skill in creating not just huge like outside areas, but inside as well is still very much just amazing. Just the density of detail with everything hanging in the mats. It all feels so lived in, and I love it. This is super cool. What we get to see here is an example of a new weather type, and this is actually referenced on this article here. Here we go. We have massive sight lines that let you look far across the environment, which links back to that idea I was talking about where the environments feel much more open, much bigger. But significantly, whole new skies featuring twinkling stars and auroras. Now, I don't know if he's going to have any effect on gameplay, but I don't think they need to. In games like this, even just the vibe can go a lot of the way. But if there is some gameplay thing associated, don't know what happened there. If there is some gameplay thing associated with this, that would be awesome as well. But super cool. This is a shot which doesn't have me worried, but I was talking earlier, despite what I was saying about how these more out there environments are in some way a good thing as they help to set the game apart from Tsushima. This especially, I think there's an area in that game which looks borderline identical to this. So there's a little bit of a concern that they'll struggle to set it apart, but I have my faith. There's gonna inevitably be some areas that look similar. And even in that game, there were so many different biomes. So honestly, I think we just let them cook and let them see what they come up with, and I have full confidence that it's going to be amazing. So here's the shot I was talking about earlier, where we can very clearly see that our character is now leaving imprints in the snow. So we have more realistic snow physics, which I don't believe was in the former game. So again, another really nice little environmental detail that just helps make the world feel even more real. See what looks like the beginning of a duel here. You had these in the first game. It's in this very nice environment with all these white flowers. Here we see our main character. I actually thought this was someone else at first because it looked like kind of masculine, but no, this is our main character. Something I want to also note, which I haven't mentioned yet, is our character seems to be a musician of some kind. In pretty much every shot we've seen them, they have had this kind of guitar, lute, ukulele, I don't know the exact name of the instrument on their back. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the last game, Jin had a flute, and I think there was a mini game associated with it. So this is probably a kind of equivalent thing for that. So yeah, it's a really, really nice little detail for our new protagonist. And she's facing off against these enemies. I wish I could tell you from looking at their design whether they're Mongols or just other samurais, other Japanese people. I'm not sure, to be honest. I guess this kind of antler, really sick-looking antler design reminds me more of a Mongol type thing, but this game is set 400 years after the former. So I do feel that the Mongol chokehold on Japan would probably have kind of weakened somewhat. I don't know. I'm not a huge history buff, but there is the question of what is going to be this key enemy force we're fighting against this time. Um, and we can see them here. Some really interesting other hat designs, to be honest. Not just this guy, but this guy as well. It's got almost like a wizard type thing going on. And this guy on the right reminds me of like the Norse stuff from Skyrim. Okay, so this is very clearly a cinematic, but that's not to say that this wasn't kind of taken using the in-game engine. So here we get our first, I guess, proper look at our new character, who is obviously a woman this time around. We've got a lot of very annoying people being angered by that on Twitter, which is what is the world coming to? um, but obviously, the main thing of this scene is this wolf that we're seeing again. And it's interesting that they're not really fighting each other here. I mentioned earlier that maybe the wolf takes on an antagonistic role. Maybe that's true at first, but if that is true, what we're seeing here seems to suggest that at some point, maybe we join forces with the wolf. And I really hope that is the case, that it's some kind of companion character, because there could be so much potential for new gameplay with that. Maybe you could send the wolf out to scavenge for ingredients to bring back to you. You could use him in combat. You can teach him tricks and certain attacks to help damage enemies for you. There is so much potential for this, and it would just be another way in which Sucker Punch could really make this game feel unique from Tsushima. So, super excited to see what the wolf's about. I also want to talk about this. This is something I haven't seen anyone talking about online. She is dual wielding katanas. This is very exciting because, and I realized that it feels like about half of this video is just me saying, correct me if I'm mistaken, because it's been a while since I played Tsushima, but I'm pretty sure you couldn't do that in the last game. You know, all the weapons would be two-handed katanas. So this seems to be another new kind of gameplay opportunity in this, which I'm so happy to see. And there's a bit later on where we see there's a really quick sequence right after the title card showing some combat. And there's a shot here where I originally watched it and I thought it's a bit of a nothing shot because it's just showing the same sort of combat as the first game. But I slowed it down and she's actually dual wielding in it, which does confirm that this isn't just like a cinematic thing, which would have been quite lame. It's a really big new defining gameplay feature as well, which is just going to be so cool. I love this idea of just having loads of new gameplay mechanics, new weapons, and as I said, that's something that the new historical setting allows for. There's just some really exciting stuff near the end, which we are going to get to. What else do I want to talk about? I want to briefly mention before we get into the final bit, her mask, super cool looking. It's a way in which I feel like this series, Ghost of is going to be the series title. It seems going forward is trying to give itself a unique identity in that each of the games will feature a unique protagonist with their own distinctive mask. I remember Jin had his own one, and this new character does as well, and it looks super badass. So yeah, she's kind of facing off with this wolf. It looks like maybe she was about to fight her, and she kind of drops her weapons, and then the wind picks up and the music picks up. Oh, this bit gives me goosebumps, man, with the wolf just running across the landscape. It's so good. Just gonna let this play for a second. Oh wow, that is definitely like the defining landscape of the game. It's so stunning. I love the I think the ginkgo here and the field of yellow flowers here. This could honestly be an engine. It wouldn't surprise me if it was. And if it is, again, you've just got the sheer expansiveness of it. I mean, you can see like this forest with a different color all the way over here. You can see lakes over here, some kind of settlement over on the right. And it's all in such high fidelity. It looks fantastic. It really does. And I'm so excited to explore this world. So we've got a title card here. And it's interesting. We've got this new kind of logo element here, which it almost looks like a flower petal, which we see a lot of here, this yellow flower petal. So it seems that this game is trying to give itself a unique identity with a associated color, which in this case is very much yellow. I mean, we can even see our main character here is wearing I think they're called kimonos with the very same color. Of course, yellow was also a big color in the first one. You know, maybe the most iconic area was a golden forest with petals just like this, but it seems that this is just taking that yellow scheme to a whole new level. Yeah, so this is when it gets really interesting. I want to slow this down to 0.25. So this first shot is probably the least interesting of the three we see here. It's just some enemy kind of setting his sword on fire. I say that like that's not the coolest thing in the world, someone setting their sword on fire to fight you. But the reason it's not as exciting is that I believe this was a thing in the first game. I'm not certain that enemies can do it. I think they could. I'm certain that you could set your sword on fire. But I don't think enemies could. If they couldn't, this is a cool new feature, but if not, it's kind of whatever. This guy's design is super, super cool though. Like I love the helmet. I love just the look of the armor. They've really aced. They continue to ace the aesthetic of this historic period. And man, I wish I could tell you if this guy was Mongol or, what his armor would tell you from a historical perspective. I just don't know. He looks cool. That's what I can tell you about him. Okay, here we've got one of the big new weapon types, which is a flail or like a whip of some kind. Super, super cool. I'm loving this expanded arsenal. Although what I do hope is the case is that it isn't so much that these new weapons, and especially the one we're going to see in a minute, the dual wielding katanas, don't replace the old weapons, the old things you could do in combat. I think they should just be things you can do on top, so you just have even more options. So of course the main thing I'm talking about in regards to that is this. When I first watched this, as I said, I thought she was just, it goes so quickly, it's very easy to think she's attacking in the exact same animation cycle as Jin did in the first game with the two-handed single katana, but no, you can see a katana here and a katana here. She's dual wielding. It looks so good. It looks so good, man. But as I said, I do hope you can opt for using a single two-handed katana as well, like in the first game. And maybe each system of fighting can have different advantages and drawbacks. None's necessarily better than the other, and it's about choosing whichever one is right for your specific situation to just add another element of strategy to combat. I'm not sure if the blood to me looks even more like realistic and detailed, the way it already was in the first game. It's a brutal, brutal game. But to me, it just looks even more like detailed, which is awesome. Feel a bit psychopathic, kind of just obsessing over the blood. It's so detailed, but it is a thing to note. Which, yeah. And then this last shot is the one which gets me the most excited. There are guns in this game. Man, that's so cool. It's so cool. I see a lot of people kind of complaining that, well, a lot of them are just incels, but you see people complaining, not necessarily for that reason in some cases, that we don't have Jin as our protagonist, because a lot of people are fond of Jin, and I understand that he was a really great protagonist. But honestly, I like the way they went with this. I think Jin's story was it was sufficiently given closure in the first game, and I think it is time to move on and explore a new hero's story. But most crucially, that also means you're not bound by time periods. They can set this whenever they want, and because they can set this whenever they want, i.e. in the 1600s, about 400 years after, they can have weapons like this, which wouldn't have existed at the time of Tsushima. It's awesome. It's so cool. Oh, it looks so good. It looks so good. I'm so excited to try that out. They've really aced the look of this gun because it would be quite easy to. I mean, Sucker Punch has always been good at kind of really perfectly capturing the aesthetic of the games in this series, but it would be quite easy for a gun, especially, to not to make it so it didn't look historical, to let it look too modern. But that is not the case here. It's some kind of clearly quite archaic flintlock system going on with the burning embers here. So awesome stuff. So yeah, a couple of things I want to talk about at the end here. I want to talk a little bit more about us having a different hero, because it seems that the way this series is going to work now on is that maybe Ghost is a kind of title that Jin got in his life, a legacy he left behind. And, it's understandable he would leave such a legacy behind because that man got up to some crazy shit in the first game. But it seems that it's now a kind of transferable title that can be passed down to different people. So, sorry, pardon me, this hero here is one of the new ones to receive this title. And in the next game in the series, that will be however many hundreds down the line after this, years down the line after that, they will also receive that title. So yeah, I don't know why I've gone this far without mentioning her name, but this is Atsu, is our new hero. So I want to just read through some of the rest of it a little bit more. There's a few things of note. The main thing I want to talk about here is, something about more than 300 years after the events. Here we go. Our story is set in the land surrounding Mount Yōtei, a towering peak in the heart of Etso, an area of Japan known as Hokkaido in present day. And the most important thing here is that in 1603, this area was outside the rule of Japan, which is why I feel they've gone for a look which is so much more wild and expansive, and it's just going to allow for... I just think it's a lot more of an interesting kind of world to go down. There are things about this setting that worries me a little bit. The main thing that worries me is that I feel one of the natural evolutions you'll be inclined to think the series would go down following Tsushima is to really kind of make the settlements more expansive. Maybe you have a game set around the ancient Tokyo area, and you can have a massive city there that's like multiple times the size of even the largest one in the original game, which would now be made possible by the new power of the PS5. But I'm not sure that's going, if they do have something like that, I'm not sure it's going to make so much sense with this setting of a world which is beyond the confines of Japan, with a world that is more wild and untamed. I mean, saying that though, we do have stuff like this. Like, people live here. It's inhabited, clearly, but there's just a question of how inhabited it's going to be. So I am interested to see that. This shot actually gets me quite excited because I believe this is the same shot we see at the very beginning, but in color. And this one I really like actually because I guess it kind of goes against what I said before. I was saying that most of the environments like this one look quite fake, but this one especially feels more real, and I love that. I love it as a variety, and it also looks unique. There's a certain kind of bleakness to this, but a beauty in it, of course, but a bleakness that wasn't really there in any of the areas in the first game. Other than that, there was that one like marshy area in the middle actually, but this is just, it feels entirely different. It reminds me quite a lot of something from Skyrim actually, the kind of the color palette, like the area near Whiterun specifically, and it looks great, and it has that feel of just an untamed world. They've really captured that perfectly. I'm not sure there's much else to discuss here. I was talking about the new mechanics, the dual wielding katanas, the flail, the whip, and the gun, and maybe there's wolf mechanics. I really hope so. And it does talk about new animals here, so maybe the wolf's not even the only one. But I think that is about it. I am super excited for this game. I need to start saving for a PS5, and my bank account is going to suffer. But God, it looks amazing, and I'm so excited to learn more. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope this analysis kind of revealed something new to you that you weren't aware of before, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.